This is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time. Now this is actually part 5 in the Oncidium Alliance series. This is one of the 2 Oncidium types that I got to do the series with. And this could possibly even be what some might see as a long-awaited repot. But I've been waiting for a reason. The reason I think is now okay. Essentials for this stage. I'm multitasking at the moment. I'm building a video, I'm doing that bit on my computer, and I'm also updating and reconfiguring a brand new laptop that arrived, which is for the Wessex Orchid Society, and as it's probably me that's going to be looking after it, I'd rather set it up the way I want it rather than the way it arrived. So that's ongoing in the background, so this will be done in stages so that I can take a break now and again. Most repots naturally go in stages. I mean, I've got no media, no new pot or anything ready yet. But phase 1, as always, is what's in my pot. And let's hope that what's in my pot doesn't also get in my coffee. So we'll separate those two for a start. The only other essential for this one is my hydrogen peroxide 3% in my sprayer, which this plant is definitely going to get, because I've actually found a snail on this one of those tiny little what do you call them, round ones. Look like the fossils you get in rocks. It was a tiny one, but those do tend to stay small, which is why they're difficult to get hold of. So there has been at least one. Obviously at the point I saw it, it became an X snail immediately. Right, this is labelled as Cambria Renaissance Coral. Believe that if you will. Now this is in this cocoa fibre stuff, which is probably going to go all over the place, but so be it. I can't get my tray in at the moment because it's outside and it's soaking wet. And where it's been raining so hard, it's splashed a load of dirt all over it and I can't be bothered to clean it. Right, this should, I was going to say it should be quite dry. This is the problem you get. This is dust dry. This isn't. This hasn't had any water for a long time. But what I am happy with is it's got roots. And yes, it's got a solid plug in the centre, which is also made of the same stuff. So it's not like a sphagnum plug that you often get. I'm keeping my eye out to see if I can see any more snails. So they do tend to live in amongst the media, down the side of the media against the edge of the pot. They get into places like that to hide during the daylight. Then they come out and do their dirty deeds at night when we're all bobos in bed. I can see this is going all over the place. Still, it can be cleaned up afterwards. Now, although this is still damp, I don't want to. This is obviously going to get run under the tap, and I don't want to do that until after I've done the hydrogen peroxide. If you do the hydrogen peroxide treatment on a wet plant, you dilute the H2O2, which means it's probably less effective. Well, it would be less effective, wouldn't it? Because instead of being 3%, it would get watered down. There is some sphagnum in the middle, so this has had 2 plugs. A sphagnum one, probably when it came out of the flask, and then some lazy tyke didn't bother getting the sphagnum off and put it in one of these, this cocoa fibre stuff plug to grow it on a bit. And then there's probably the same lazy tyke also didn't take either of those 2 plugs off when it was potted into the larger pot. I can't see any flipping snails, but what I really would like to see, which I may have jumped the gun, but in this case it doesn't matter, I was hoping there'd be some new roots coming off of my new growth, which is pushing on now since it first started. Now this doesn't smell Fausty, so in this particular case this cocoa fibre has not started to break down, and as a consequence it hasn't taken the roots out. These are still good healthy roots. We've got a job to see a dead one in there, and it's a branching root system, and I've got active growing tips on some of these branches. But if you look at the roots, the one that will probably catch your eye more than any other root is this nice one here. Where was that growing? That was growing around the outside of the pot, wasn't in the media, was it? Right, I see no snails yet, and any that are in there are going to soon be ex-snails anyway. The most thorough treatment you can do is a dip with the hydrogen peroxide, but you've then used a lot of hydrogen peroxide that doesn't come dirt cheap, and it's then useless. Can't be used again. Once it's used, it's gone. The O2 becomes O, which leaves H2O, water, which is not a lot of good for getting rid of things. It's only good for washing stuff off. Right, that's a good root system. See the size pot it came out? What size pot do you think it's going back in? It ain't going to be that big. No, I still can't see any snails. That could have just been an odd snail and I got it. But we will take the appropriate precautions anyway. While I've got a plant out of the pot and I'm making a mess anyway, I always try and remove old sheaths where I can get at them. Just take them off. They're hidey holes for things, and if you happen to be a bit heavy-handed with watering, they are also capable of soaking up and holding water around the base of the pseudo bulb. See, this is quite dry, quite woody, but if it was kept wet, it would do just that. It would encourage things around the base of the pseudo bulb, things we can do without. It's also a place to hold moisture, which again, any standing water is a breeding ground for things, bacteria, pathogens and stuff. Right, so we will give that a hell of a good spray with the hydrogen peroxide. Then we will give it a good wash off under the tap and remove any remaining stuff, which I won't do on, actually I will. I'll do the spray on camera. I don't know why I shook that. Just to show the extent. Because there's some media in there, that media has to become absolutely soaked in the hydrogen peroxide. It's no good just being on the surface, it's got to soak right in. So it's quite a heavy spray. And what I do is I come at it from one side of the plant and spray everything available to me. And then I give it like a quarter turn and have another go. So again, right in round the base, all over the roots, and some of the roots that have already been sprayed are going to get sprayed again. Well, that's better than missing some out. And then turn it again. Notice I'm making absolutely sure I get in between the rhizomes. That's another good place for snails to hide, in between the bases of the pseudo bulbs. It's now starting to drip, so I know that I've sort of done the job. There's more than enough on there to be doing the job. And as it drips, it's not fizzing to any great extent, so it's not finding a lot of work to do. This are good. So this may even be a precaution rather than a remedy. But either way, it's getting done. For such a small effort, I see no reason why not to. Simple as that. I just see no reason why not to. I'm just going to allow some to run down in those bracts, because that's another hidey hole for snails. So just make sure there's somewhere for it to go and just get in the base of those bits there. Again, hidey holes. Hidey holes for things, so that's that one done. I suppose I could do that one, that's actually a leaf rather than a bract, but nonetheless it's got a hidey hole at the base of it. We'll get some down in there till it runs out the sides. That's that bulb done. This was the one that had our bloom on, and where an old bloom spike goes down into one of these lower leaves, that is the scales' favourite place to be, because they've got some room. the old spike stump keeps the base of the leaf apart. They got somewhere to be. Everybody got to have somewhere to be. I'd just rather they went and bead somewhere else. Preferably bug heaven. I think us orchid growers, we must have totally populated bug heaven with all our treatments and stuff. Well, if they didn't come in, they wouldn't get zapped, would they? I've got no sympathy with them, don't get me wrong. It's another old spike, stump, good place for hidey holes. So we'll get in there, and get in that last leaf. Just put enough in there that you see it run out the bottom, that's the easy way, then you know it's done its job. Right, so we'll put that to one side, let it carry on fizzing for a few minutes while I go and do something else. Then I'll come back and rinse it under the tap, clean up, and we'll come back and we'll have a look at what roots, if any, need removing, and then we'll get on and put it in its new pot, which will not be the same size as the one it came out of. Now, a lot of people automatically, especially in the books, you know, when you repot, only go up one size bigger. They never mention going down a couple of sizes, do they? I'll be back. Right, I'm back. I can't believe how many updates that laptop is taking to actually get up to date. I mean, it's not a brand new one, it's a refurbished, I think is the expression. Orchid Society couldn't afford that laptop new, far too much money. But nonetheless, they probably use the same as the company I work for used when they were building loads of laptops. They build one and then they use what's called a ghosting process. So they effectively make an exact copy of the disk on the built PC at the lowest level. So it's not actually looking at files or shapes or anything like that, it's just looking at the bit patterns that exist on the disk. And then you ghost that onto another PC and it just fires up because it's an exact low level copy. It saves doing it every flipping time. But nonetheless, as such, I would imagine that if that's the process they used, it was done a long time ago. Windows has had a load of updates since then, so it does a couple, then it restarts, or waits for me to restart it, then it does a few more, and then it comes back again, and it's just an ongoing tedious process that will eventually bring it up to date. And then I can fiddle with it and make it look like how I want, so that I can find everything. Get the bits of software on there that I want up onto the desktop so that I can see them and not have to go searching for them every time I want them. These roots are not bad. There are a few manky ones on here, but I'm not going to go too mad, quite honestly. There are some really soggy ones, but not many. It's not bad at all. Well, that one just came away in my hand, so there's no point in leaving that. That's it. If you go to squeeze it and it just falls apart, no contest basically. It's a goner. Well, that one looks good, but it isn't. It's soggy right up to the base. See, it looks good. It wasn't. Just gently squeeze. See there, that one's all soggy until you get to there, and then it's okay. So that one can just go back below those branches. And that one looks bad, but it's not. Back to a branch, just the end of it. The end of that's gone, and that one's gone right back to the base. So it's just a process of elimination. Often just the sight is enough to say, yep, you can come off. Other times you do have to do the squeezy thing and just check. Come off. Gotcha. Another one gone. That's about it, I think. Oh no, that big one's gone. Come off. Oh, and so's that one. Come around this side, see what we got around here. Obviously gone. Stringy bit hanging out the end. So we're on the oldest part of the plant now, effectively, so this is where I'd expect to find more anyway. Plus, the roots that are hanging off this oldest part of the plant would be the ones that were in one plug promptly placed inside of the second plug. So they didn't stand a lot of chance really, did they? That'll do. What's that? Oh, it's just a bit of a sheath. You can come off. Last one. Gotcha. Right, that will do. I've had far less roots on an Oncidium. Look at, talk about missing one, look. Again, it's on an older part. Right, now stop fiddling. The more you fiddle, the more you think you'll find, and then you end up thinking, oh, that one looks bad, when in fact it's not. So, you know, you've got to get to a point where you need to stop. That is the point. So probably about a third to half of the roots came off, which is more than I was expecting, but it just goes to show appearances can be misleading. You've got to get in there and check. Right, now all three of the bases of these bulbs are roughly at the same height, and so is the new growth. So that's good. Look, there's a snail bite. I don't know whether you can see that. That's a snail bite on that softest growth there. Just a little hole. Take another one round the other side. Hopefully the little blighter is the one I squashed a while back and he didn't have any friends. Right, pot size. These are the choices. We got Daddy, Mummy and Baby. Now, I think it's reasonably obvious to most that it ain't going to go in there, is it? And this one here is roughly the same size of what it's just come out of. Now yes, it would go in there and it would accommodate those roots quite nicely, but what it's going to get is forced in there whether it likes it or not. I've found with the Oncidium types, the tighter the pot on a repot, the faster the roots take off. And I've done it enough now that I'm quite happy to say that out loud for all to hear. I cannot necessarily explain why, but I don't need to, because it's what I do. And I've shown enough Oncidium tiny little pots with big plants sticking out the top that have got so many roots in the pot there's no room for any more, to actually justify that it works. Whatever the reason, it just does. They take off quicker. Now, excuse me. Now, a conundrum. I would like to plant that in bark so that it would dry quite quickly. Yeah? So I could get a wet dry cycle going, especially as it's winter time, not the ideal time to do a repot. But hopefully with the new growth coming, it'll make up for the time of year by pushing out new roots very soon. They're not started yet, but they will do. But it's a dramatic change of media to go from something that stays permanently wet for ages and ages and ages, resembling moss in its moisture content, to just open bark. And I've often found that if you do a dramatic change of media type, the roots will stall, and then in turn that puts a stall, quite a bad one, on the plant sometimes. So this is going to get a mix. In there is chunky bark in the bottom. This is a mix of small and medium, and some leftover bits of moss from when I didn't use it all last time and I poured it back in the bag. See, I don't worry about things like that. Some people would say, oh, you shouldn't reuse it, you know. Well, I haven't actually used it, have I? It was left over. And the only thing is, obviously this moss is dry. It ought to be wet. Just have a quick look round for alien bits in here, which are not bark. You get bits of wood and all sorts in this stuff nowadays. So that's a mix of small and medium. And for this one, for this repot, we're going a bit heavy on the moss to try and make those roots, or kid those roots into thinking nothing much has changed. So it will stay wet longer than I would like, but it's only for this repot. The next one I can move towards pure bark. Now that's not going to be for some time. The chances are this is only going to push out the one new growth. That's all I can see at the moment. Who knows, another one may come out the other side. But at the moment we've got one new growth. Well, the chances are that's going to have to mature and hopefully bloom before it pushes out another one and gets to the point where it can be repotted again. So it could be in here for some time, and I'll just have to go careful with the watering and check. Treat it as an exception. As I go round all my ordinary pots, which is the set this this one will go in, when I pick this one up, just have a look. Rather than just pour water in it, have a look. Does it need any? And the chances are it will stay wet longer than some of the others, especially this time of year. Now, under normal circumstances I wouldn't want much more moss than that, but I'm going to use up what I've got wet. There's not much left in the pan, just as well use it up. See, I even reused moss that's been into soak, that's soaking wet. I just squeeze it out and put it in with my other stuff. And then next time I want some moss, I just bring that back out and soak it again. Don't like to waste. Costs money. Seems silly to waste it. Right, so I've mixed up far too much, but I might have something in mind for what's left over, maybe, depending on the energy levels and how much time I've got to put in on that flipping laptop. Well, things I do for other people. Right, so a bit in the bottom, preferably with not too much moss, because that's the bit of the pot that will stay wet longest until the roots get down in there. Now this is going to look like a bit of a crab, and so it is. And like I've said, it seems to work. And if you find see these roots are quite flexible, but they would snap. But because it's a branching root system, if the odd one or two snap while I'm doing this, they'll branch out above the break point. So it's not what you would call the end of the world. I prefer not to have air gaps on this one. Normally with an Oncidium, I'd rather not have air gaps, but if a few are there, I don't mind that much. It's an epiphyte. Where it grows on the trees, there would be bits of the trees without moss or without other roots of other plants. They would get onto some bare stuff, and some of them would hang out in the air because that's where they headed off. They headed off into space, and that's where they stay. So they don't mind some air around them. It's not the end of the world. But in this case, because these roots were totally enclosed without any air spaces, any that have got an air space around them, they may object to that change. So I'm trying not to leave any gaps. And what I'm doing here is I'm going all round, making sure my roots are covered best I can. See, now there's an area with quite a few roots, but they're pointing downwards. If I try and push too hard in that area, I'll probably break some. And then what I do when I've got to about that level is I have a look at the level of the plant in the pot and think, actually you can come up a bit. So just pull it up a little bit, do another tap, and find you can get another ½ inch of media in, which is more for the roots to grow in. So it comes up a little bit higher in the pot, and we'll have another go. The only thing I want to make sure is that I've got a mossy bit with small bark near where that new growth is, not too many big lumps, because when that new growth pushes out its new roots, you don't want them drying out. So just make sure we've got an extra little bit of moss in that area. The next thing is, are you going to stand up? or are you going to fall over? But I haven't finished pressing down yet. Not pressing hard, I'm just easing the bark into the gaps. Right, I'm not going to get any more in that side, am I? Right round the back. It is possible a new growth could come out from here, from this one. And it'll just about have enough room. Might have to do a bit of pushing and shoving to find its way in life, but right, that's about as firm as I dare go, and that is quite firm in the pot. And now I'm just going to get some larger pieces without any moss just to go around the surface. Bring it up to just above the base of the pseudo bulb on this type of plant. If it was a cattleya, then I would think, right, I want that rhizome fully visible. I don't want any of it buried. Yeah, so more like sitting on the top. But with these, just the base in the media, not halfway up the pseudo bulb like you buy them sometimes. That's just bad potting. But they do need to be firm. Now if that was wobbling around all over the place, I'd basically put a stake down in there, next to a big pseudo bulb, upright, and then I'd come around the other side of the plant and find another one and put another stake down there, and then I'd just pull the top of the two stakes together and tie them, and the two will just hold the plant upright, whereas one might not do it. And that way you're not tying anything onto the plant, you're tying the stakes. The stakes are resting against the plant. So that's that one done. We'll put our original label back in. Still got the price on it. Oh dear. Don't think that's what I actually paid for it, I can't remember. So we'll put that back in. Just for now, I will put my own in there. And that's that one done. One of two. There are two Oncidium types in this series. The other one's still got some blooms left, not too many. And at the moment, the blooms on that one are coming from several pseudo bulbs that matured at the same time. This one only had one. Yeah, and on the other one I'm waiting for new growth signs in various places. At the moment one of those pseudo bulbs has a new growth just showing, but none of the others have, so I'm waiting on the other one. So this one just happened to come first, that's how it's gone. So back in the lounge, don't forget we're growing these in the house, not outside. And this one, if that was come out of a more open media, I would leave that for a couple of days before I watered it, because there's moisture in the moss. But because it came out of quite a compact media that was quite wet, I don't want these roots to dry. I want to fool them into thinking nothing much has changed, so I will water this straight away. And it'll get a good flush basically, because this bark does have dust and stuff on it. I don't bother washing it before I use it, and I always work dry. You can guarantee you will get much larger chances of gaps if it's wet, because it sticks. Yeah, and you'll get quite a few gaps, whereas if it's dry it tends to just fall into all the spaces quite easily without having to work too hard. So that's why I work dry. But I haven't got the dust off, so if I pour loads and loads of water through there, literally loads through there, it'll wash that dust out. And there may still be a little bit of dust the next time I water it, but that'll be it, it'll be gone then. So I don't bother trying to wash anything before I start. I mean, you can see in here there's bits of dust and stuff, it's not all bark. So that's that one done, and we'll come to the other one sometime down the line. It could be months. You know, we've waited quite a while for this one. We'll wait for the other one till a more appropriate time, and see you next time. Bye for now.